What about entertainment made you really commit to it early on rather than going to that big law firm? Like, was it a strong feeling of passion for it that made you decide?
Well, I knew if I was going into law that I would have to be, and this is kind of around the time when I took intellectual property, where it kind of
Mm,
all came together. I said, well, if I'm not going to be creating, then I want to be next to creators. I want to be helping them in a
I love that.
meaningful way.
Mm,
And I want to be facilitating. I think that there are jobs within the industry that are not facilitating. You know, there are
mm,
lawyers out there who are, I just think that it's nice to be in a position where you're working with artists and saying, okay, well, if this isn't legal, then we're going to find a way to make it work, right? As long as it's legal and we can get everybody else on board, you know, this is your creative vision. You give me other ideas and I will tell you, okay, that you're going in the right direction or the wrong direction. This is your work. And I want to preserve it as much as possible. Because
absolutely.
I'm a believer that the strongest form of self-expression really has to be the one that's least mediated by, frankly, people like me,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Like the people that are, you know, the studio execs,
Can you
the
elaborate on that a little bit in terms of like just going in a little bit more detail about what could happen if maybe the people that you're describing are involved too much?
well, I think there's degrees of risk that people are not willing to take.
Mm,
So something may be legal to do, for example, right? Let's take a specific example. If somebody wants to do a parody of a particular film, and let's say it's a huge franchise film, right? And I were to say, well, under the law, looking at the statutes and looking at the case law, I think you can do this, right?
mm,
And I'm willing to put my name on the line. I'm willing to write an opinion letter and help you get insurance. That's just one step. The next step is, how do I get it distributed, right?
mm,
And other people might say, well, this is a great film, but we're not willing to take on the legal risk. So maybe you need to change it. Maybe you need to adjust it. Maybe you need to pull it back. Maybe you can't do the project at all,
mm.
right? And so, and I understand that because there are corporate interests at play.
Yeah.
But the fact is that, let's just say this film was great and, you know, really unique and powerful. We need more of those, right?
Mm.
And people need to be able to see them. But at the same time, they need avenues of distribution to be able to
Absolutely.
support those.
Right.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I'm like a lot of the people that I talk to are within the filmmaking space that are on the creative side. And we always talk
Hmm.
about like the collaboration between each other from artist to artist. But I'm curious about the collaboration between you and a producer or director, whoever that you're representing. How do you find that relationship? Do they reach out to you? And what makes you want to work with somebody and build that relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, you know, we get a lot of referrals by word of mouth. You know, we worked on such and such film, and maybe the independent film space, as I'm sure you know, is it's very like an independent producer might be working on five different things at the same
Sure.
time.
Sure.
And so that producer was working with this other director who is doing this film, and they say, oh, well, Chris is the person you need to talk to. So we'll do a call and we'll figure out if we're the right fit, both from
Mm.
a subject matter standpoint, but also, is this going to work, right? From a personality standpoint and expectations
Yeah.
standpoint. The relationships that I enjoy the most are the ones where people are very open to understanding what the value that I can bring to a project.
Mm.
And those, they also know that given the way I approach projects, I'm not going to overstep my bounds. I know that this is your work, but I'm going to try to facilitate it as much as possible, right?
Mm.
So an example might be, the first one that always comes to mind is this filmmaker named Matt Johnson, who's
Okay.
based out of Toronto.
Matt Johnson. Is he Matt Johnson? Does he do YouTube as well? Am I thinking of the right guy?
He might have maybe used to, but he did the Dirties, which is I think it premiered at Sundance back in like
Oh, okay. I might be thinking of a
2010.
different Matt Johnson then.
Okay. Yeah, it's a common name, right?
Yeah, it is, I guess, yeah.
The latest one that he did was a film called Blackberry, which was the true story of Blackberry.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think I watched that maybe 2 months ago on the plane. I've seen it a couple times, but I saw it pretty recently again.
It's a really fun movie, right?
Yeah.
And that was a challenge because we pretty much didn't get permission from anyone, right? So one of the things that people come to me for is films that are based on a true story. And maybe you have permission from one or two people upon whom that film is based, but you don't have permission from anybody else. You also don't have permission to use certain clips that are used in the film or use trademarks. Like, we have to obviously be concerned about RAM, which is the company that, ran Blackberry. And so I work with the filmmakers to ensure that they can actually release this film without permission, right? Because a lot of people wouldn't want the film to actually be released because it's in some ways negative, but it's in some ways not, right?
Right.
So the ideal filmmaker is someone like Matt who brings me into the creative process at a really early stage and says, number one, can I do this? Sure, yes. Okay, subject to a few conditions. Okay, we have a script. Can you look at it? Great. Okay, here's what we need to, pivot. But you're going on the right path. And then finally getting to the place where they have a finalized script, we sign off on it, and then we review the cut and we, work on that front as well. But it's just a really collaborative process.
That's awesome.
The client that is not so great is the one that sees me as an impediment, right? So it said, I don't want to share this with the attorney until the absolute last second, and hopefully
They think
we
you're
can get over the
blocking
line.
they think you're blocking their creative freedom potentially.
Right. When what I would like to think is that the more information that I have, the more prepared I can be, the better advocate that I can be for you, right? And help you make, adjustments on the fly as they come up. So, and that's, most filmmakers, most of my clients are like Matt. So I don't want to give the impression that it's like, a mix of these people. It's really a blessing to represent people like him and to have the clients that we have. Yeah.